Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Semino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How are you?
Wow, I decided that felt like a very conscious decision on your part to make it uplifting and pleasant and all this good stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to walk into every episode with like a sullen sigh. It's that gets old.
But again, not really related to the subject matter. So
Oh.
you have the sad voice for the good stuff, and you have the good voice for the sad stuff. So
It's just how I'm feeling during that moment, during that intro.
sure, live your life. That's
Yeah.
great. I appreciate the keeping me on my toes and the fans on their toes. That's very appreciated. But Walt, let's hope people are on their toes. Hope they're ready for what we're talking about today. We're back on Awesome Truth, and we are talking about Season 2 of WWE Ruthless Aggression. The listeners, really the eagle-eared listeners, because this was one of our lowest downloaded episodes of all time. But
Yeesh.
because the network Peacock has created a second season, so Walt, we had to dip our toe back into Ruthless Aggression. And I gotta say, I don't know if there was enough here for a second season.
Yeah, so we've really kicked the can on this one for a long time. It's like Ruthless Aggression or a YouTube docuseries on Adam Page, the YouTube series.
This did premiere in November of last year, so it's been 4 months, and so that's a solid chunk of time. 3 months, I guess. Sorry, that's not too bad,
Yeah.
I guess.
So, but unfortunately, because of that kicking the can, it's been so long since I've actually sat down and watched it. I have watched them all. I just maybe that's a reflection on the series, is how little I remember, how not making it by definition not very memorable.
I mean, my thought in watching this season was, as you sort of noted, we just did The Good, the Bad, and the Elite, the YouTube series about Adam Page and Kenny Omega, and we talked about it as just a recap, like a series of clips, like literally a clip show cut together by a very impressive person to really just encapsulate the whole story. And I was watching Ruthless Aggression Season 2, and I was like, is this that much different? Like, I don't know. I'm not getting any insight necessarily from the talking heads. 99% of the things they said were things I already knew, or just flat out opinions that I don't really care about, and the rest of it was just clip shows from a worse series of angles and a worse time in wrestling. So I was like, I don't know. Not that we should, all documentaries are not created equal, but I was like, I don't know if this particular documentary series really stands apart from what a guy cuts together well on YouTube.
Yeah, right. It's funny how a guy on YouTube, just ripping videos left and right from Being the Elite was more entertaining than the WWE's entertainment like juggernaut, an army of editors and producers like just whose sole job it is to create narratives based on their own shit. And I mean, maybe that just says more about us than it does about them, but I feel like less about the moving pictures and the clips that were used and the stories that they're telling. I think it's just the idea that Ruthless Aggression has multiple seasons and like the air of this is important. It's like, no, it's fucking not. Like, as a fan sitting here who lived through this, first off, I actively stopped watching wrestling during half of what we're considering this like very important like period of time in WWE's history. It just isn't that fucking important. I mean, it's a transitionary period in the time of the company.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Season 1. It's in our archives if you want to go listen to it, And for the flaws of this doc series, which I don't think either one of us loved, but certainly I think noted that it did highlight stuff like Batista, Cena, Lesnar, like real true power players in wrestling, important characters, great performers. Like it made somewhat of an intriguing case that this era was a little better than I would say the general fans like you and I who left after the Attitude Era would give it credit for. So I buy that theory from Season 1. I feel like that was generally what they were going for. But then Season 2, there's just no more meat left on the bone. Like, we start off with Hollywood Rock, an episode about Rock basically going to Hollywood, doing Scorpion King, and then turning heel for a little chunk until he basically left entirely. A little face run in there, but essentially it's about his his smug, arrogant character that he played there. A good character, like, don't get me wrong, I love this character, and I did like some of those clips from remembering when Rock was able to be cool and a heel and sort of subvert expectations and do something fun, unlike current day Rock. But I don't think of Hollywood Rock as a Ruthless Aggression Era character. Like, I get that the timeline sort of lines up. Like, if you're going to do a hard stop from Attitude to Ruthless Aggression, I guess you have to count Hollywood Rock as part of Ruthless Aggression. Some chunk of some overlap. Lesnar was there, obviously, so maybe there's overlap there, but I just don't think of them as part of the same world. Like, I know it's semantics, but I was like, what are we talking about here? Like, what eras are we discussing? What characters sort of tie to this? Or is it more like you're saying, where it's like, this era was important, and we're WWE, and we define our own eras, so we're just going to mush anything that was tangentially related in there, and then rant to you about how it was good, and how you should like it then, and how you should like it now.
Yeah, I mean, because just hearing you talk about this just now, it's like, if I was going to do an Attitude Era doc, I would kind of bucket the content based on, like, the top performers, like you're saying, like Brock, Cena, Batista, Orton. Like, yeah, that makes sense. And through their kind of telling their stories about during this time, this Ruthless Aggression Era, like, you're going to get into different topics like OVW, like Money in the Bank, like this, like, and so
a limb chamber.
Yeah, right. Taboo Tuesday. But you get to a certain point where it's like, oh, we're doing a whole episode on OVW. Like, I feel like I've seen all these clips and we talked about all these wrestlers in OVW in this way, except now we're just taking those parts of those episodes about these individual wrestlers, and now we're putting it together in one longer timeline and one longer conversation about it, when this could have just been like a quick aside in one of those other episodes. It's like, all right, well, now, like, I just feel like we're retreading, and that's essentially kind of how I felt with a lot of the topics. Specifically that one. I mean, that was egregious, I thought. But
that's exactly the word I was going to use, is egregious. Because I'm reading the description right now, and it says, a new generation of superstars, headlined by Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton, and The Miz. All right, well, we already got those first four characters, basically, in the previous series of episodes, right. So I know a lot about all those guys. The Miz is new, and they do talk about Tough Enough, but Tough Enough was pretty useless, and The Miz, is great, but, like, I don't know. The Miz is sort of the era after this as well, and, like, I just don't think that, like I guess he started then, like, but if that's really all you're hanging your head on, new wise, is the Miz story, like the late era Tough Enough, like, I just don't. There's just not a lot there, and thank God that episode was like 31 minutes long, because I was like, I'm taking a lot of pee breaks during this episode, or a lot of, like, cleaning breaks, like Windexing stuff. Like, I'm doing as much as I can to not watch this episode, because there's just nothing there that we don't already know, and I don't really understand. Like, by that point, it just becomes aggressive how much they just, like, I guess, needed to make 5 episodes, needed to find subject matter, and are just, like, trying to weave this narrative that does not hold up at all.
I forget that FCW is a thing, so, like, remembering about OVW is just like, oh God, my brain hurts.
Yeah, we already know OVW. Like you said, we already heard plenty about it. We got it.
Yeah. Well, but to take a step back, though, and not take a complete dump on this season 2, I will say that some of the character specific, superstar specific episodes were worth doing. Like, while I don't agree Hollywood Rock should necessarily be dedicated, like the face of Ruthless Aggression, there was a lot of fun stuff in there that I forgot or I maybe missed. And so it was like, yeah, this was an interesting era of this guy's career, that he was kind of in and out of wrestling. And this is, in many ways, he was a trailblazer in this way, because, not many wrestlers have done that before he did. I mean, maybe you could argue Hogan, but, like, The Rock was truly in Hollywood and then came back and had success. maybe that's like the defining stakes of that, where it's like, yeah, Hogan did it and then failed and then just realized he had to hold on to wrestling for dear life, whereas The Rock came back, but really he was like on his way to stardom at that point.
I mean, first off, how dare you besmirch my friend Terry, my boy Terry?
Right. I was counting down the seconds until you were gonna jump in there and defend your boy. But
why can you confirm that Rock Hogan 2 happened at No Way Out? Is that a correct thing that I learned from this documentary series?
I guess
what is that?
I would have
how
to consult Ruthless Aggression.
Why would they do that? I mean, I guess you want to juice sales for No Way Out, but man, come on! Like, there's got to be a better time for that.
I mean, you only had Hogan for a handful of months.
I know you probably had Rock for a very short amount of time. Yeah,
months.
I guess you sort of had to do it when you could. But man, what a letdown! Like after Mania 18 to No Way Out, like, ugh.
I don't know. Why'd you do like Goldberg, Lesnar in Saudi Arabia? Or that's a bad example. I don't think they wrestle in Saudi Arabia. But like, why do you have any big match in Saudi Arabia? It's like because you only have so many people and you can only do it so many times.
Or the Sheik demands it, so you got to do what the Sheik says.
Sheiky baby, but I think that my favorite episode of this bunch is the Shawn Michaels Renaissance, the second act of his career, because that was truly a Ruthless Aggression Era thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a guy. You and I, we talked about Shawn Michaels recently in the Untold HBK Angle episodes, so we've gone over a little bit of this before, but I concur. It's, that is, you can argue about when certain eras start, when they ended, what characters were involved when. Like, we'll probably have some of those stupid arguments at a certain point, but like you said, Michaels is firmly there, and it was one of the highlights of that era because you really got a chance to see him face off against guys, from a little before then, and then the up-and-comers like Cena. Like, you get to see so many sort of dream matches with Michaels. Like, he didn't intersect with everybody exactly. Like, he didn't really have a Rock moment, which is a little, sad. But with almost everybody else, he had some interaction with. And they were all great. Like, he was at the top of his game, and he found a place in this era that really didn't fit him at that moment, but he still made it his own and made it count.
I mean, he was a great connector because, when Austin and Rock and Brock all kind of left in the early 2000s, it's like you had H and like you didn't have a whole lot connecting you to like what was like 3 years ago. And so Michaels was a nice connector of like new generation talent and like, that kind of style, and then evolving it to fit all these other stars. I mean, like, it's funny though, because when I think of Michaels, like Ruthless Aggression and Shawn Michaels, for some reason, the first image that pops in my head is like Shelton Benjamin eating the biggest super cake on Raw. And it's like, that is truly a quintessential Ruthless Aggression Era match. A Raw match between Shelton Benjamin and Shawn Michaels.
Which was a banger, right?
That was great. I mean, they both were super athletic and put on a great match. But like, I'm not trying to make a comment on like my favorite or the best. It's like, it's like one of those things that just really sticks out. It's like that is quintessential. Like that is like, those are names you would see on the marquee of a Raw in 2004,
Yep.
2000, whatever. Yeah. So like,
no, I agree. That's like that really as weird as it is, that kind of stuff with Michaels really does sum it up. Also, what sums it up is a moment that is featured a couple times, and this is something that we really didn't go into in the previous batch, so I liked it, was the Innovations episode talks about Elimination Chamber, a limb chamber. Like, they got into the weeds on what a limb chamber was, why it exists. And they also, they talked about some other things. As you said, they talked about Taboo Tuesday. They talked about Money in the Bank, which obviously went on to be a beloved thing that I think has only gotten better with age, and everybody likes it, and no one gets tired of it, and it's just maybe their best idea in 20 years. But in talking about a limb chamber and in showing the Michaels win where everybody loses their fucking mind and it's incredible, like, it reminded me, like, a limb chamber I think is pretty whatever at this point. We're about to have it at the time of this record and no one gives a shit. It's part of the Saudi blood money deal and whatever. But I'm reminded in watching this, like, Elim Chamber was a really big deal. Like, they made it seem cool and unique. They put all their best guys in it. Like, it was the way it sounds like it hurt like hell. The way they pulled it off, they had interesting spots. Like, I could see it reminded me that this was a time where, like, a limb shame was a thing that everybody got excited for and looked up to and was waiting for it to happen. Like, that's wild to me on its own. That, like, that was a thing that Shawn Michaels won and everybody liked it and, like, it had value.
Yeah, I personally like a limb shame.
You still like a limb shame?
Well, I like the idea of a limb shame.
What's your favorite limb shame match?
I could name you a few, actually.
I can name one besides this one I watched on this episode, which looks pretty good. I guess the two I watched, because there's the one where Van Dam kills Triple H, and there's the one that Michaels wins, and those are two different ones, right?
Well, the Michaels win, I think, is the first one because it was for the title in the Survivor Series,
which was
like
his only title run of the Return era, right?
Yeah, right. In his like poop brown pants.
It's very poop brown.
I think shortly after that he switched to like the looser pants style that like is synonymous with that era Michaels.
Yep.
No, but there's like I don't want to fucking like.
You said you like limb shame now, so you have to own up to that.
Like the one with Daniel Bryan and like they set up this whole story of like Santino.
Oh, that's the one I was going to reference.
The underdog.
We watched that together, so that's why I was going to bring that up.
Awesome. Yeah, right. But also like even like as recent as like a few years ago when they had the women's tag titles Elimination Chamber, like I thought that was like excellent.
Okay.
And that was only a few years ago, and it told a good story. I mean, like ultimately at that point Hell in a Cell was so fucking overdone and tired. It still is. I mean, like I couldn't name you a good Hell in a Cell match that has happened.
Well, the Fiend Seth Rollins, obviously.
Yeah, that's memorable, but yeah, infamous. Would even argue, but Elimination Chamber like has interesting elements to it. Like it's not War Games. Like I hate when they just like, oh, this is like our War Games. Like it's not your fucking War Games. War Games is War Games.
And you guys did a series of War Games after this too, so you can't say something else is War Games.
Right? Yeah. There's an element of cage, which is good, but like not like claustrophobic blue salad cage, and there's also a level of anticipation. And with these elements, there's an ability to tell good stories, which I have seen them do. It's not impossible. It's something that, like if you use this thing the right way, you don't just like boilerplate it at a certain time of the year, like can tell good stories. And so, and that is solely a Ruthless Aggression Era thing. So, kudos to them.
Yeah, I mean, but you hit the nail on the head, obviously. Like, the timing of it would be great. Like, for a while there, it was an on the road to WrestleMania thing. And it was like, at that point, it's almost a foregone conclusion, because you have a pretty good sense of what they're building to then. So, if there's no mystery to a limb shame, then why are we watching it, Then it becomes just six guys fighting to a very foregone conclusion.
Right, well, it's kind of like with the Money in the Bank, where they used it as, like, a stepping stone at WrestleMania. I'm not going to make the argument that it's too much. Oh, we're crowning the next champion, like right here, or like the future of or like later in this year, expect Jack Swagger to fucking have the championship now.
Another one we watched together.
Yeah, right. It took him so fucking long to get that goddamn belt off or the briefcase off. But I digress. Ultimately, I'm just saying, like, timing is important because for a while, Money in the Bank meant something when it was happening during WrestleMania. And now it's like its own thing in the middle of the year. And it's like, oh, yeah, this is happening. And it's still important, but also it's like tired. And I don't know if the timing is great. I don't have a better solution, but like to your point with Elimination Chamber, it's like it could be more important if it was on a different time of the year done strategically. But, that doesn't sell February.
Yeah, it's really just that this doc reminded me of the value it had. Like when they were talking about it, like that it was a new idea they came up with. Like you said, it really incorporates. It's a series of of mushed together ideas into one big glob of an idea. But that's fine. That's so much of what wrestling is anyway. And it really did work for a while there. And it just made me sad that it's just it's a little. You're right. It's not as bad as Hell in a Cell for sure. Like I would never doom it to that level of irrelevance, but it was interesting to see it having this sort of panache and excitement around it that it definitely doesn't have anymore in that regard.
It was also nice to be reminded of the reason of the ideas that were so bad that it didn't even make it out of Ruthless Aggression Era. like I don't know if it's a legal thing when you like promote fan engagement, you have to actually like follow through, but like why the fuck did they ever let fans decide matches, opponents? Like they kind of already do that anyway, like organically speaking. Like, you know, they're gonna buy merch or the wrestlers they like, but fucking like doing that on the fly, I don't know how it works over there, but if I was producing it, I would have just been like, okay, cool, yeah, type in your dumb phones and we're gonna put Shelton Benjamin in because that's who we want anyway, and we're gonna pretend like you all fucking like him.
Yeah. We're ever gonna know? Like, and what are we gonna do if we find out? Like, are we gonna get mad? Are we gonna storm Titan Towers? Like, I don't really see what the negative outcome is there.
It's a work, bro.
Yeah, everything is a work. It's all predetermined. Yeah, Taboo Tuesday was stupid. They were trying new things back then. Like, I'll give them credit for that. Like, I think they saw the need. Like what's the last new thing they've done these days? You know, like I can't even think of anything.
I guess you're right.
Like it's all retreads. Like I mean, and I guess I can't fault them now. You know, they're printing money hand over fist, whether the product is good or whether anybody really enjoys it. Like the money keeps pouring in, so maybe they don't have to. But in Ruthless Aggression, they seemed like they had an idea of like, let's expand our horizons. They did the brand split. Like they tried stuff, you know, and it wasn't all good. But if this series does do another thing well, it does emphasize that point. Like they were throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks, and like that is somewhat noble, somewhat interesting, like somewhat worthy of documenting after the fact. Like it's certainly better than sitting on your hands and doing nothing.
If nothing else, Ruthless Aggression Season 2 was a reminder of what wrestling looks like when your creative team actually tries. Or tries and succeeds in executing new, novel, different ideas.
Or you know what? Or brings back, or, you know, incorporates legends that granted they were not like 50-year-olds like Goldberg and, you know, who have to be coddled and given bullshit barely legible matches to function. Like, but when you bring back Rock and you bring back HBK, and they don't just get a smiling babyface run where they beat everybody up and have the best time. Like, they put other people over, whether it's in matches and literally, you know, on their backs, or whether it's with the Hurricane stuff, and Rock puts Hurricane over because it clicked and everybody liked it and they ran with it for 6 months. You know, like that's great. Like one of my biggest frustrations with the modern product, especially with WWE, certainly with WWE, is when they bring back legends or anybody from the old days. It's almost always as a good guy, and they almost always just do it for like a nostalgia pop that they milk for as long as they can, and then the guy leaves. You know, and it's like bring them back and fit them into the show, especially if they're around for, you know, 2-3 months. Like one of the joys of Batista when he came back that one time and he was Blue Tista and everyone gave him shit, and then he joined Evolution again and was a heel and everyone thought he was the best, and like it retconned that entire botched first couple months, and by the end then Batista went on to be a Marvel hero and we all love him to death, but like that could have ended so poorly, and instead they pivoted and made it great because they ran with him as an actual character with motivations that he would have based upon his previous several years in WWE. You know, like that's a thing they super don't do anymore, and they really definitely did it with Michaels, with Rock, with all these guys in this era.
We could go on for hours about how
the current product sucks, and
even this era was this, and this was better even if it wasn't Attitude Era.
Yes.
But that being said, you know, this was what it was. I mean, there was some good stuff. There was some good stuff. And then there's a lot of like, oh, that was a stretch, like the women's revolution, or I don't even remember what they call it. That was a whole episode on like, oh, here's all the things that we accidentally did that ended up becoming the women's evolution later. It's like, yeah, but you still didn't really give a shit about women's wrestling back then, so don't act like you did. Like,
yeah.
Because you do now. Like,
we stumbled upon Trish and Lita, and they got over, and we really had no choice but to keep running them out there, and they were great. But that wasn't the plan to make Trish and Lita. You know, that was a byproduct of these two women being really, really good at their job.
Yeah, and breaking through, previous.
A like very sturdy glass ceiling, like one of the more sturdy glass ceilings that could ever be. And their only other real follow up there is like, and then Mickie James, did it too. And I'm like, look, Mickie James is fine. Like, I do appreciate her a little more after seeing, some of her early work, which I was unaware of. But let's not pretend like you guys, Mickie James went on to be beloved for the next 2 decades. Like, I'm pretty sure Mickie James got phased out pretty hard as soon as they could, and everyone started going back to bra and panties matches.
Right, yeah, and then she was quickly in a lesbian love triangle angle shortly thereafter. So,
cool. And then became a TNA legend. So.
Yeah, way to pat yourself on the fucking back.
Yeah, that women's episode was very, and there's stories there. Like Trish and Lita is a good story, and again is of this era,
yeah.
So I can't fault that part of it. But just make a Trish and Lita episode, like don't pretend like there was the seeds of 2 decades later were planted in 2003 or whatever.
It's a great story by itself, not in a series called Ruthless Aggression. Like, but when you start branding things that way, it's like now you're really putting this under a microscope, and you're really now you're bringing on the wrath of smarks like us and critical assholes. But like, it's true though. Like, if there was a season 3, which there might be a season 3,
why?
What the hell would you even put on there? If WWE is going to give you $100,000 to make this thing, what are you putting on there?
Honestly, you throw me for a loop because I know so little about this era, and the things I know are reinforced strongly by watching these 2 seasons of this documentary. I would 100% imagine if they were to make a season 3, it would have to be the ECW relaunch, right?
I feel like that
they didn't do that yet. There's no way.
Wasn't that? But I feel like
that was of this era, right? Especially the first One Night Stand where he beat Cena.
No, they talked about the invasion. At least.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like the One Night Stand and like the bringing the show back on Sci-Fi. Like they'd almost
is that even Ruthless Aggression?
What would it be if otherwise though? Like, it was before I started watching again. Well, I've never seen WWE ECW ever in my life. So
I can't wait for Peacock to just to come out with a new series that kind of defines 2008 to 2012 and puts a fucking name on it.
He's super undefined.
Tell me what the hell that era is, but to me, that I feel like that's too late.
So
but like,
when is the
maybe you're right. I don't know.
When is the Ruthless Aggression Era defined as? Like, what else is there to even fit in there?
Did Taker have like a specific?
I mean, he was
thing happening back then. And
he was the dead man. I guess it says 2002 to 2008. When did ECW relaunch? Let's look that up. I'm gonna keep this in. This is what we're doing. We're doing research on the air. The ECW relaunch happened in 2006.
Okay, yeah.
So
it 2 years after the first.
Yeah. Bodies was the theme song. Ran for 5 seasons.
But didn't we? But we kind of covered that in RVD episode, right?
Was there an RVD episode?
Wasn't that season 1?
I don't know.
This is a mind-numbing exercise.
Yeah. The season 1 was the intro episode, Cena, Evolution, Lesnar, and then there was no RVD episode. There was the Civil War Raw vs SmackDown episode. There wasn't even really an Invasion episode.
There wasn't?
I think the Ruthless Aggression episode to start was sort of like an Invasion episode. Because Cena, Evolution, Lesnar were the 3 in the middle. Then there was sort of the brand split episode, and then there was the intro. Yeah, there was no RVD episode.
Oh, okay. I don't know what
I guess maybe you do RVD, but like, is there... RVD was featured in the Innovations episode. He could be featured in an ECW episode, but I don't know what else there is, man. I really don't.
I mean, he was...
Eddie, you could do Eddie, but then you got to do Benoit, and they can't do that, so...
yeah. That's tough. But like, yeah, those guys were definitely Ruthless Aggression Era.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what we were saying before. If you did an RVD episode, you would organically talk about... the fact that he came from ECW, he's brought in the Invasion, he organically gained his own cult following. Now that he's exposed to this giant, I don't even say cult following, like he was exposed to a wider audience that also loved him, and he became a breakout star as a result. Won the Money in the Bank, took it to the One Night Stand, and because of the success of these One Night Stand shows, it launched this this new ECW that he became the face of until he got pulled over smoking weed with Sabu and then got pulled off of WWE, which is a ridiculous statement to say in 2022.
And if they
someone got kicked out of wrestling for
if they
weed.
presented it the way you just described it, that would be a pretty good episode. That's a good 45 minutes there.
Right. And you're going to touch every fucking Elimination Chamber, Money in the Bank, probably Taboo Tuesday. I don't know who was there, but there's some, I don't know. What do I know? Maybe there's an episode about Jericho. He probably went through
what about like Booker T is one of the few survivors of the WCW side of the invasion? Like he was certainly a guy back then.
He would represent the transition to WCW.
I mean, that's the answer. Is if you're going to do a season 3, and I do not recommend they do this, but you have to then shrink it back down to about one person. Like you got to stop catching, doing grab all, terms that could mean 10 things so you can fill 45 minutes. Like, sorry, you don't have to do a 45 minutes. You've proven that. Some of these episodes were 31 minutes long. Like, you can just do a shorter one. Just focus on an actual person or situation of substance and just talk about it for as long as it warrants being talked about, and then just end the episode. Like, there's no mandate. As far as I know, I can't imagine Peacock cares. Like, keep running the content mill,
Right. I mean, because I guess I think the greatest fear in all this is the fact that there will be a season 3. I mean, right? I mean, there'll probably be a season 3. Like,
I mean, probably.
What's stopping them? What's stopping them from doing it? Like, they have the archive. Like, they're gonna get like Giant Gargano, them to talk about all this bullshit. Like,
they'll get a bunch of talking heads, and all of them left the company, and they'll all say former before their names in the thing. Like
Bruce
Adam
Pritchard
Cole
will be there probably. So just get him to sit down and talk about this shit.
I don't know, man. It's just it's the same frustration. We've said this 100 times on the show, but it's I wish they would just cover. I don't expect them to be objective. I don't expect them to be journalistic at all. That would be insane. But I wish they would just cover things the way they should be covered. Case in point, the Stephanie McMahon mentioned in the First Revolution episode, the women's episode. Like, they have to shoehorn. It's almost like a joke at that point where they have to give you a 3 minutes where they're like, Stephanie McMahon came on board and sort of took charge, and everyone was like, uh-oh, Stephanie's here. And then they don't mention Stephanie again the rest of the episode. And you're like, was she important to the women's division here or was she not? Like, you can't just sort of say she was around. Like, cool, you have a woman who works for the company who is the boss's daughter. Like, that does not indicate diversity or equity or women's empowerment in your company just because the boss's daughter has a high-profile job. Like, but they just almost have, it's like they're compelled to do it. Like, even whether Stephanie says do it or they feel like they have to, I don't know what the reason is, but it's just like, it's sort of like is it making fun of us? Like, do they know we're going to get mad and they do it for that reason? Like, I don't know what else it is besides that at this point.
Again, these are all very loose threads, and I feel like we've exhausted. I mean, like the same way I never really want to see another like Monday Night War doc. I certainly don't want to see another Ruthless Aggression Era anything. So
that was the conceit when we started. We were like, okay, this is something we haven't seen covered a ton, right? Like, I think we were cautiously optimistic for season 1 because it was an under-explored topic compared to the rest of the things that were on the network at that time.
Right, and now it's like, hey, well, there's 14 years have passed since 2008, so like maybe we explore some shit that happened a decade ago. Like, that would be nostalgic for me at this point. It's like, yeah, let's see some Shield shit.
Yeah.
Do that, but
Can we talk about Punk? No, we can't, but we could. Right.
The summer of Punk.
They own it. Just fucking talk about it. I'm not, like, it's just, it's one of those things where they're like you said, the Michaels episode was good. The Rock stuff was good. I love Money in the Bank. I can't reiterate that enough. Like, I think it's a great idea. Like, they had some hits. It's not a bad era. It's definitely this series made me like the era a little more. I can't deny that. But do I need to be spoon-fed that again? Is my belly full from Gerber food that is labeled Ruthless Aggression Era? Yes, it is. Baby does not want any more Ruthless Aggression content, I must say.
Yeah. Oh, JBL would be another good one.
Oh God,
I would never want to. I mean, like that if they did that for a season, in this hypothetical season 3, if they did a JBL episode, it would be all new to me because I'd be like, I've never actually watched a JBL program match, main event match, these like SmackDown exclusive. Like, That would truly be novel to me.
I've seen some Justin Hawk Bradshaw matches, but never any JBL matches.
Yeah, right. I would also begrudgingly watch it.
Yeah, I would. They'd let him tell his side of the story, which would probably be frustrating because he seems like he's a bit of an asshole. But it would happen. There's no doubt about it. And Walt, I have to say, if someone from Peacock, the network, whatever they call themselves now, are listening, please don't make another one like we done. No one downloads these. We get a good amount of downloads on the show, Walt, from various topics. And one of the ones that is definitively not a good topic, downloads-wise, is Ruthless Aggression. So if that means anything to the network, like I want to believe that's a similar statistics on their end. But I guess the season 3 end will be the real indicator. Like, is this something or is this nothing? I think we're both hoping it's nothing.
Yeah, we're daring our audience to listen to this.
Yes.
Prove us wrong.
if this one blows up, if we get a good number on this, Walt, then I guess we'll really just sort of tip our cap and say, all right, in end of 2022 or whatever, like brace yourselves. But fingers crossed that we don't get to that point.
Yeah, well, we're just gonna. If there is a season 3, we'll just kick the can so far that.
We'll be like, anything out there, any Roddy Piper book, Mick Foley book, like anything we can do. What other wrestlers have starred in pilots of TV shows that's in there? Like Predator has Jesse Ventura in it. Like, please give us something to cover.
Yeah, right. For the love of God.
Well, if you want to hear more about Ruthless Aggression, as you're hearing all this episode, which would be a remarkable thing to want to do, but you can at awesometruth.libsyn.com. You can find all of our episodes there, including the Ruthless Aggression episode. You can also subscribe to us and get all of our old and new episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere podcasts are, we are there. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at awesometruthpod. Well, great to talk Ruthless Aggression. I gotta say, as much as we ranted about it, I feel satisfied. We got to talk HBK, we got to talk Rock. The subject, the topics are fun. The broader subject matter, perhaps not so much.
I mean, we did get more content out of us bitching about this series than they did talking about their developmental back in 2002. So
talking about Maven.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a small bar to clear, but we cleared it. So yeah, this is therapeutic.
It's cathartic, it's therapeutic, and it's over. So thank you all so much for listening. And remember, the truth will set you free.